All right, welcome. Today we're going to pull back the curtain on something really cool happening in the world of finance. We're talking about how alternative data and machine learning are giving investors a totally new kind of edge.
I mean, this is the million-dollar question, right? How can you predict a company's future performance before anyone else knows? Imagine knowing a company's sales numbers weeks before they officially release them. It sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie, but it's not. It's happening right now, and the clues, well, they're hiding in some pretty unexpected places. So what's the secret sauce? It's something called alternative data. Now, this isn't your typical Wall Street stuff, like balance sheets or earnings reports. Nope. This is the digital exhaust of our everyday lives. It's that trail of data we leave behind every single time we buy something online, search for a product, or even post a review about our job. These are the hidden clues. So here's what we're going to dive into. We'll look at how receipts can predict sales, how clicks forecast demand, what company culture can tell us, and even how our Google searches can gauge market sentiment. It's all about finding that new data edge. Okay, first up, predicting sales with receipts. Let's look at this digital receipt trail. So, can the stuff in our email inboxes really predict a company's sales? I know, it sounds a little far-fetched, right? But just think about it for a second. Every time you buy something online, you get a receipt in your email. Now, what if you could tap into millions of those, anonymously, of course, in real time? What kind of picture would that paint about a company's health?
Well, here's how it works. The concept is actually pretty simple, but the scale is just massive. First, you collect millions of anonymized e-receipts from people who've opted in to share them. Then, special tech scans those emails, pulls out the key purchase data, what was bought, where, for how much, and turns that messy, unstructured info into clean, structured data. From there, you just add it all up at the company level. You can see total sales, units sold, all of it. And the final step? You feed all that aggregated data into a model to get a real-time forecast, often way before the official numbers come out.
And get this, the results are absolutely stunning. Just look at this table. The typical Wall Street analyst consensus, they were off by over 5%. That's a pretty big miss. But the forecast using this big data from email receipts, the error rate drops to just 1.64%. I mean, that is a huge leap in accuracy.
All right, let's move on to our next case study. We're going to shift from what people actually buy to what they intend to buy. Let's talk about forecasting demand from clicks, the clickstream clue.
So think about your own online habits. Before you actually click buy, what do? You search, you browse, you compare prices, right? Every single one of those clicks is a little breadcrumb, a little signal of your interest. So the big question is, can we gather up all of that online window shopping from millions of people and use it to predict a company's upcoming revenue? It turns out you can. And the answer lies in looking at three key types of digital demand data. First, you've got web search. What are people actually typing into Google? Then there's website visits. Pretty straightforward. How much traffic is a company's website getting? And finally, you have social media attention. Are people liking, following, and talking about the brand? You put those three things together and you get a really clear picture of consumer interest. And check this out. The data speaks for itself. Look at the companies with the weakest digital signal, the bottom 10%. They only beat their revenue estimates about 30% of the time. Now jump to the other side. The companies with the strongest digital buzz, the top 10%, they beat revenue estimates a whopping 75% of the time. That's more than double the likelihood. It's a really clear, powerful correlation. Okay, for our next one, we're tackling something that sounds way harder to pin down: corporate culture. I mean, can you really turn the vibe of a company, the virtual water cooler chatter, into a cold, hard financial signal? Let's find out. So the raw data here comes from places you've probably seen, employee review sites. Take a look at this quote. It's a real one, just anonymized. The business priorities keep changing, putting a lot of pressure for management to perform with less resources. Wow. You can just feel the stress in those words, right? Pressure, less resources. This is exactly the kind of unstructured text that's just waiting to be analyzed. But how on earth do you make sense of thousands of reviews like that? Well, you use a really smart machine learning technique called topic modeling. Basically, an algorithm reads through all of that text and starts to notice which words hang out together. It creates these topics. So for example, it might group words like colleagues, team, and coworkers into an environment topic. And separately, it might group performance, goals, and incentives into a goal-setting topic. And here's the crucial point.
the real kicker. The analysis found that the language employees use when they talk about goal setting was a statistically significant predictor of that company's future earnings. Let that sink in. How people talk about their goals at work can actually help predict financial performance. The virtual water cooler is broadcasting a real signal. All right, for our final case study, let's zoom out. We've been looking at individual companies, but what about the market as a whole? Can we gauge the pulse of the entire market just by looking at what people are searching for online? To do this, researchers created something called the Internet Anxiety Index, or IAI. It's actually a pretty clever idea. It's a measure of market sentiment that's based on how often people are searching for terms related to economic fear. Words like recession, unemployment, stock market crash. When people get nervous, they search for this stuff more, and the index goes up. Simple as that. And does it work? You bet it does. Look at the payoff here. This chart shows risk-adjusted returns for different strategies. Just buying and holding the S&P 500 gives you a ratio of 0.83. Not bad. Using a rule based on the famous VIX, the so-called fear index, gets you up to 1.00. But a strategy based on this new Internet Anxiety Index, it delivered a ratio of 1.26. It actually turned out to be a better gauge of what was really going on. So, we've looked at 4 really different, fascinating examples. Let's pull it all together and talk about the new data edge and what this all means for you. So let's recap the hidden signals we uncovered. We saw how email receipts can give you a real-time proxy for a company's sales. We saw how web clicks and searches act as a leading indicator of what consumers want. We learned that employee reviews can be quantified to predict earnings. And finally, that our own anxious searches can be turned into a novel gauge of market sentiment. It's pretty amazing. And honestly, this is just scratching the surface. Think about all the other data out there. Satellite images of retail parking lots, location data from our phones. New sources are popping up all the time. Which leaves us with a really fascinating question to think about. As our world gets more and more digitized, what's going to be the next hidden signal? And that's a wrap for this explainer. Hey, if you found this valuable, we'd really appreciate it if you'd hit that like button, share it with someone who might find it interesting, and of course, subscribe for more. Thanks so much for joining us.